So recently got this question from Miss Eileen Smith. She says, as someone who needs to invest in a camera, can you speak more about the lenses you use for live streaming? Thank you. Great question, Miss Eileen. Let's answer that. So when it comes to live streaming, I really want to think of a couple things and what environments I'm going to be in, and that dictates the lenses that I'm going to use. So I want to talk about some of my favorite lenses that I've used for live streaming and what I look for in a lens when I'm getting ready to use it for live streaming. So if I'm getting ready to buy a piece of gear or equipment, something like a lens especially, I don't want to just go based off of recommendations online. I really want to go based off of my use case and my environment. So enter lens number one. And to most people's surprise, it's this little kit lens that everybody rags on about every camera ever. Kit lenses are extremely useful and helpful, and not all of them are as trashy as people would say. No, they aren't going to look as good as a lens like this comparatively, but at the same time, they aren't bad either. And they'll give you a good range. And what I'm looking for when I'm using a kit lens, I can zoom in from 16 to 50 millimeters and decide what is it that I actually would need in a good lens for live streaming. So I always do a few live streams with a kit lens just to see what that's going to look like. And so for me, 16 to 20, and I know for a fact 35 would work, but I always use a kit lens for any new camera that I'm getting just to see if that's still going to work for me, and then try to pick lenses based on that. So then comes my second favorite lens after that, or my first real lens that I'm looking at, and that for me is going to be my 35mm f1.8 prime lens. And this is my most beloved lens that I've ever used on any camera ever. I found out from trying 50mm, that's just like I'm pretty much setting this thing down the hallway trying to just get a little bit of myself in the shot. But with 35mm, I don't have to be as far, and I can still get a beautiful look in a super blurry background that is just my favorite lens ever. I can't stop gushing over this lens. Okay, so to show you this next lens, I have to put on the kit lens to show you. But this next lens is the famous, just talked about, gushed over on YouTube, the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens. So I originally wasn't sure about this lens at all, but again, I was trying out some different lenses. I even picked up a lens I haven't talked about yet, but would be good to introduce now. The Sony 16mm f2.8 lens that is just a little pancake lens that everybody, I think, on YouTube has dogged out as being cheap and not much better than the kit lens. But the thing that I was concerned about, because on the kit lens here, you can't really judge the background blur, and so you can see like everything is more in focus than it was. But it was cheap, it was beat up, and it was going to be at least a 16 f2.8, and then I could try a budget-friendly lens just to see, do I really need or want the Sigma 16mm, or would this one be enough? And so now you're looking at the Sony 16mm f2.8, and while yes, you could decrease the ISO a little bit, I just really wanted to see, is the background blur going to be more significant at this focal range? Because it's like, okay, between 16 and 20mm for shots like this would work, like I tested on the kit lens, but it's hard to judge the background blur by that 35mm because it's always going to look almost too good all the time, and there's just no way to tell. Every lens has its own characteristic, and while this one isn't bad, this lens gave me the confidence to go ahead and try this 16mm by Sigma and see if it was worth the hype. It was. So when it comes for the choosing a lens for live streaming, you don't need these many lenses at all. You're already going to have probably a kit lens when you first get your camera, unless you buy it used and maybe it doesn't come with one. But it's always super helpful to get these, because this is the defining factor to tell you what lenses you should buy for your space. So that's how I decide what I'm going to use for live streaming and lenses just in general, because it's not like I just want a lens only for live streaming, but I do want to make sure it fits those specific needs, my specific spaces, and just how I plan to use the lens in general. Get that kit lens and put it to work for you, and then find like the lens that's within maybe like the price range that you want, or has the quality as far as like the low aperture for a good background blur or really sharp lens. And depending on the brand for who you choose, the brand name of like the Sony lens, the Canon lens, the Fuji lens, whatever specific brand tends to be pretty good as well. So let me know what lens suggestions or questions do you guys have about lenses, if you guys have any more questions around it. But that's where I'm gonna leave it for this video, and with that, guys, live with passion. I'll see you in the next video.